It is a great pleasure for me to introduce our very first workshop presenter this year, Robert Ferguson. Robert has lived with his whole family here in Hong Kong for the last 25 years. He worked in media, mostly, most recently with The Economist and Reuters. He is an award-winning photographer with images appearing in international and local magazines, in books, and in the online media, including the South China Morning Post, Time Out, Hong Kong Living, and Action Asia. But most recently, he published this incredible book called Bugs of Hong Kong, which I am a big fan of, and I keep going back to that book. So today I'm looking forward, just like you are, to learn a lot about Hong Kong's bugs. He's also the founder of Wild Creatures Hong Kong, and really a fantastic lecturer and photographer. So welcome, Robert. I'm so thrilled to have you here.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction. I think with that, I will share my screen and get cracking. So thank you very much for the introduction. Yes, I have been a photographer, blogger, and conservationist only for the last 3 or 4 years. And during that time, I've written a few publications that you can see here about the wild creatures, about the snakes of Hong Kong, but also most recently about the bugs of Hong Kong. And that's what we're going to talk about today, these little mini beasts that we find on our doorstep. So to begin with, we're going to have a little bit of the, I don't want to say boring, but it's a little bit, we've got taxonomy, what is a bug? And then we're going to look at what do they eat, some of the dangerous bugs that we have here, and then we're going to look at where we can find them and how to identify them. So when we think about what a bug is, sometimes it's easier to think what it is not. And when we look at the animal kingdom as a whole, animals are classified by their shared characteristics. So that divides them into these different groupings. So we have things called vertebrates, which means that they have a backbone, that they have a skeleton. And these are the big birds and reptiles and the mammals that we see around us. So those aren't a bug. And if we look below that, we've got slugs and snails and worms and things, and those aren't bugs either. So actually, everything which is a bug is known as an arthropod. So a bug can be a crustacean, it can be a lobster or a crab, it can be a millipede or a centipede, it can be an arachnid, which means a scorpion or a spider, or of course, it can be an insect. So a bug has to have jointed arms and legs. It has to have a... Can you hear me okay now?
Okay.
Okay, good. A rigid exoskeleton, a segmented body, and it should be bilaterally symmetrical. And when we look at how many bugs there are, if we take all the living things in the world, including the plants and everything in the sea and the fungus and everything else, more than half of all the different living species are actually insects. And someone has worked out that there are 10 quintillion insects in the world. And what that means is if you were to divide the globe up into football pitches, every football pitch would have about 40 million insects in that football pitch. So think about that next time you go outside looking for bugs. In that area, there'll probably be about 40 million insects for you to find, some of them very, very small. And in Hong Kong, we have an incredible biodiversity. We have 245 different species of butterflies. We have 70 different species of mosquitoes. And in fact, we have about 16,000 different insect species. Just a phenomenal number of different animals that we have here in Hong Kong. Did you know we have 2,600 different types of moths that live here in Hong Kong? Just a fantastic amount of species that we can go out and find. So here's a really big question. Who knows what bugs actually eat? Well, there's really two different types. The first ones are what are called herbivores. And so it's quite safe, they're on your face because they only eat plants. Some of them eat fruit, some of them eat flowers. Like you can see, the weevils, the flies, the cicadas, grasshoppers and things. And some eat what is called phloem and xylem. Now, I wonder how many of you know what that means. Well, phloem and xylem is what is inside the stem of a plant. And you can see that these bugs have begun to chew through the stalk of this plant, and that's what they eat. It's actually inside the stem of that plant, but they're vegetarian. Some bugs eat fungus, some of them eat dead bodies, and if we look in the top left corner, some of them, like this dung beetle, only eat poop. That's all they eat. But most of the other bugs are called carnivores, and a carnivore is something that eats other animals. So you've got assassin bugs and robber flies, those lovely dragonflies that we see. They also eat meat, and the mantises and the tiger beetles. These are all different animals that eat other animals. And they do this in different ways. So how do they hunt? The centipede has little forticleps. It has little legs at the front, which have venom inside, and it stabs its prey and puts venom in before it eats it. Some of them, like this mantis, will just grab its prey, hold it, and then eat it while it can't get away. You can see it's eating this grasshopper here. Yum, yum, that's a lovely meal. Some bugs, like the scorpions, we have very small scorpions and whip scorpions here in Hong Kong. They have large crushing claws that they grab their prey with and then are able to crush it, and then they will eat it, also being predators. This is a particularly weird one. So these true bugs, these red bugs, have a long beak-like proboscis, like a straw coming out of their face. And what they do is they plunge that into the other bug, and then because they don't have a stomach, they then push the saliva into this other bug, turns it all to mush, like a milkshake, and then it sucks it back up into its own body, leaving the other insect completely empty. Some bugs, like wasps, they lay their eggs on caterpillars or even in chrysalises. So when these little wasps hatch, they eat the caterpillar or the chrysalis inside, and then later grow into these small wasps, which then crawl out through these tiny little holes. And some, like these big spider wasps, what they do is interesting that the adult is vegetarian. So they only eat pollen and nectar and other plant stuff, but the young ones are carnivores. So what these wasps do is they find a spider, catch it, and then they will take it away to their hole, and then they will lay an egg on it, and they will either paralyze it or, like here, chop all its legs off and leave it in the hole, so when the egg hatches about 5 to 6 days later, it can have its first meal in the hole on this nice, fresh, juicy spider. Now, when we're looking at spiders, these are some of the most ingenious and clever predators. So when we're thinking about how we're going to take pictures of them and things, have a look at the different ones that we have here and the different ways that they hunt. So I think we all know that these spiders, a lot of spiders have big webs and they catch things. This golden orb web weaver, you can see on the right here, has actually caught a bird. And I've also seen bats and even small snakes in their web too. Very, very sticky, powerful webs that they have. Some of them are more like leopards, so they'll wait hiding. This one was hiding under a daisy, and when its prey comes along, the Asian honeybee, it'll leap out, and it's got these specialized fangs, and it'll inject a type of venom into the bee, paralyzing it, and then it will be able to eat it later. Some spiders will actually have a web inside its mouth, and they're called spitting spiders. So what they do is they will then throw the web onto its prey and be able to go and get it. Or some will actually be able to have a web, a net between its legs, and like a fisherman, throw its web onto its prey and catch it that way. Really quite clever. But my favorite is this one. This is called the Bola Spider. So it doesn't spin a web. It just has one strand of silk, and it puts these very, very sticky blobs on it. And then these blobs smell like a female moth. So the male moth comes flying along going, oh, look, there's my female partner, because he does it by smell. And this spider then swings this like a fishing rod and catches the moth on his sticky line there and pulls him up to be able to eat him later. What an incredible trick for such a tiny, tiny little animal. Then we come to the point, are bugs dangerous? If we're going to be going out trying to take pictures of them, what should we be careful of? Well, if you're scared of spiders, a lot of people are scared of spiders, and we even have tarantulas here in Hong Kong, but they're only the size of my little fingernail, so there's absolutely nothing to be scared of. Spiders have a little bite. It's not too painful, so really there's nothing to be scared of from the spiders that we see around us, even though they can move quickly and look a bit scary. But the little ants that we have here, especially the red imported fire ant, they're very, very small. You've got to be very careful. They have quite a nasty, itchy little bite if they ever get hold of you. So be careful of some of the ants if you're out there, particularly if you're getting down on your hands and knees, trying to take photos and things. Be careful you're not in an ant's nest. Quite a few times I've lain on the ground and gone, ooh, and I've had ants on me. Be careful of this. If you ever see a red and yellow and black little thing, it's actually a female wasp. It's not an ant at all. And that's got a very nasty sting. So do be careful of if you see that red and yellow and black. It's called a velvet ant. Then we come to the bees, the wasps, and the hornets, and they have a sting which is supposed to keep you away from the nest. They don't hunt with their sting, it's only in defense. So don't go near their hive. Don't go near anywhere where you see lots and lots of these coming in and out, particularly if the hornet stings you. It'll release what's called a pheromone, a type of scent, and that'll tell the other hornets that you're attacking the nest. So more and more hornets will come maybe and try and sting you. So if you ever get stung by a hornet or a bee or a wasp, go away quickly from where you are, because that can be quite nasty if other ones come and try and sting you later. Centipedes can be really quite painful, and we must be careful of these. They can be quite big and they have quite a painful sting. So I think out of all the animals in Hong Kong that I see, the little creatures, this is the one that I'm most scared of, even though it's okay, it's only that big and I try and keep away from it. I don't run away from it, but I try not to get too close to them. Yeah, you got to be careful of that one. So the other day, I had a mummy talking to me that her daughter had put her hand on one of these caterpillars that you see on the left here, and they can give you quite a nasty little sting from the poison that they have in their hairs. And it's very important that you don't touch particularly the furry caterpillars, because they can have quite a nasty little sting from their little hairs. And what can happen is the hair can get inside your hand, and then you need to take sticky tape to get it out again. So it's very important you don't touch these types of caterpillars. Then we have the Asian tiger mosquito. I don't know anyone who really likes mosquitoes, but there's a lot of spraying that goes on in Hong Kong. You may have seen the men out there spraying away, but actually last year we only had one case of dengue. So really nothing to worry about. And actually, the more you get bitten by mosquitoes, the less you worry about it. So it's not actually too bad to be bitten by mosquitoes. But these guys can be quite surprisingly stingy. What they do is they create a chemical inside them. And if you touch them or harm them, they squirt it onto you. And that can give you a blister. And you'll often find these. This one's called a Lychee Stink Bug. Because they smell pretty bad if they spray you, and it can actually, the chemical can be quite nasty. And the blister beetle, because it can give you a blister, you may see them. So do be careful if you see these types of bugs. Don't pick them up, don't play with them, try not to put your hand on them. So now we're going to look at how do I find more bugs. I get this, well, how do you find all your bugs? So this one slide may be one thing I would say. A lot of people go walking in the park. Well, slow down. You will find, if you go and look at a tree trunk, that's how I find these lovely lantern bugs that you can see in the top left here. Or look under the plant leaves, because a lot of them, like the mantises, they will often hide underneath the leaves. And in particular, I go and look at different flowers, or I'll look at where the leaves have been eaten, like you can see here where the daisies have a butterfly on them. And daisies are a great plant to attract lots and lots of different insects, particularly butterflies. And the other thing is, a lot of people only go walking during the day. Well, how about going out a little bit before your bedtime? Go out when it's just getting dark, and look around and try and find things with a head torch or with a torch. You'll often find their eyes shine, and a lot more different types of bugs come out at night, like the caterpillars that I've found here. And it's a great time to find them because the butterflies are often asleep. So you can get up close to them and look at them. I seem to have lost control of my screen. Someone's writing all over it. Maybe they could stop doing that, please. Chloe, maybe you could remove this red line. I'm not sure how to do that. Anyway, someone has hacked you. So where to go? Different environments. Well, if I want to find dragonflies, then I would go to streams and ponds. Get your mum and dad to take you out to a park where there's a stream or a pond. And I have a friend who I went out with earlier today, and she just looks on the handrails where you walk along, and she finds loads and loads and loads of little insects and bugs and spiders and arachnids and all different kinds of things just on the handrails in different parks. And also go to butterfly gardens, and we've got quite a few really good ones of those in Hong Kong. We've got Xingmun, Taipo Cow. You've also got them up on the peak if you live on the island. And in Taipo, there's actually a butterfly reserve, which is very, very good. But if you just go out to the local parks, you will find in the flowers and on the handrails lots and lots and lots of different bugs. So when I'm asked often, how do I identify and find out more about bugs? Well, I mean, I've been doing this for about 3 years, and I learned a lot about bugs by observation, by going out and looking at them and watching them, and not just walking on, but then just watching them. How do they fly? Where do they go? What eats them? What do they eat in turn? And that led me, in 3 years, I was able to write this book about the bugs of Hong Kong. And so it's a lot of information that you also can find by finding the animals and then trying to research them online. And in particular, I use an app on my mobile phone called iNaturalist. And this is very, very useful, even for very young people, where basically you can see my wife here in the top left corner taking a picture of something. And when you've taken the picture, this app is quite clever because it will tell you what it thinks it is. The artificial intelligence in this app will look at this and say, oh, we think that is the caterpillar of the golden birdwing. And then you can look at the picture and think, yes, that's right. So it's a very, very useful way to identify the bugs. But identifying the bugs actually is really, really, really hard. I must admit, it really is a specialist thing, because once you think you know something, like this lovely dragonfly, the crimson dropwing, but the female, the mummy, is actually a different color. She's yellow. So how do I know that she's a crimson dropwing? Because actually her name isn't anything to do with crimson. So it can be quite challenging. Or the male and the female can be very different sizes. The female giant orb weaver is 10 times the size of the male that you can see here. It's actually in the Guinness Book of Records that she is 10 times bigger. Just imagine if your mummy was 10 times bigger than your daddy. It would look a bit funny, right? So while you're out there looking for these different animals, you may find non-arthropods, you may find non-bugs, you may find, if you go down to the ocean or the seashore, you may find reptiles, amphibians or mollusks. All of these, I think, still qualify for the competition.
You know, my name is Ocean.
Yeah, if you get down to the ocean, there's loads of stuff in there. But also, I play a bit of a game with myself sometimes when I go out. How many insects can I find? How many spiders can I find? How many different myriapods can I find? And in the next talk, we're going to be talking about taking their photo.
I could find one. I could find one just now. You say is the most scared one, the long one.
Yeah, that's the centipede. They're scary, right?
Oh, my centipede.
Yes, I saw one. Is
chunky, like a whole chunky snake with.
One is so small, and I
So
use
hold on a minute. We've got time for
camera
questions at the end. I think I should have said that maybe earlier on. But just really wrapping up, I'm often asked which are my favorite bugs. And I think I've got 3. So this is one of my favorite. This is called the cloak and dagger bee. It's very small. This is a very naughty bee because what it does, it's actually a type of cuckoo bee. And you know what cuckoos do? Cuckoos go to another nest and lay their eggs in it. So this bee, what it does, it doesn't collect any food. It just goes and finds another bee's nest where there is food, and then lays its own egg next to that food. So when its baby hatches, it then goes and eats the other bee's food. Now, that's quite naughty, but it quite appeals to my lazy side and clever side of taking someone else's food. So it's a bit of a naughty bee.
Is it the bee will take someone's food and steal their food?
Yeah, the baby bee steals the food. But the reason I like this bee is look at its eye. It's got these hexagonals inside it. I just love that bee because of that. Then this is probably my favorite caterpillar. I mean, caterpillars can be really, really bonkers. This is the caterpillar of the white Commodore butterfly. what a crazy looking animal. It's got these things coming up out of its back. It's got this spiky head and a weird looking bottom. Just an amazing looking bug. Just fantastic. And I think if you find one of those, take a picture, put it in the competition, you could probably do quite well. But out of all the bugs, now there's two of them here. This isn't one. These are two which are joined. This is the male and the female. This is the mummy and the daddy, and they're actually mating at the moment. This is called the lantern bug. And I like this bug because it's got this really, really, really big nose, probably a little bit like me, but my nose isn't quite that big. But it's supposed to, what they thought in the olden days and why they call it Candelaria, why they called it the lantern bug, is the people in the jungle told the explorers it glowed at night, and the explorers never checked and went back and wrote up their book on all the bugs of the in the world, and they called it the lantern bug because they thought it glowed at night, and it doesn't. And this bug actually is a true bug, so it has a proboscis, it has a beak, but it eats the sap of different plants and trees. So it'll put its proboscis in, and then when it's sucking this sap out, it's so sugary, it can't digest all of it. So some of it comes out of its bottom in little globs of sugar. And if you're very, very lucky, sometimes you'll see a gecko come up behind this bug and lick its bottom to get all the sugar that's come off it. So it's a really strange bug with a proboscis like a mosquito and a nose like an elephant with a name that doesn't match it, and just spectacular colors. And you can find these out. There are quite a lot of them on the trunks of trees in Hong Kong at the moment. So I think, yeah, it's about half an hour. I'd like to wrap up there and see if there's any questions. I think we heard a few as I was talking there. Chloe, maybe you can help manage some of the questions we may have.
Sure. Do you have any question for us, Carson? I saw you raised your hand. Carson or Henry?
Hello.
Hello, what's your name?
Hi.
My name Olivia's son. Olivia's brother actually. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
And I was wondering when Robert said that the bees lay eggs in the other bees' hive, won't the bees attack? So I'm wondering how they manage that.
Ooh, that's a good question. So actually what happens is these are a type of what's called a solitary bee. So they don't actually go after the bees in a hive. They will go to other solitary bees which have just their own nest. They won't have many other bees. So one bee will come along and have its pollen and collect all of its food next to where it lays its eggs. So just one bee, and then the cloak and dagger bee, the cuckoo bee, will come along and lay its egg next to that one. So the other bee actually won't be there anymore because it's already collected its food and laid its egg. So it doesn't go into the hive, and the other bee won't be there to attack it. Good question. Chloe, do we have another one?
Zhengling, do you have a question? Or Thomas at Fate?
Yeah. I thought you were going to mention true bugs. Are you not going to mention true bugs?
Sorry.
I'm pretty sure you briefly did with the lantern bug. Is that a true bug? I forgot.
It is. The lantern bug is a true bug. So it can get quite confusing. You raised a very good point because actually some people don't like me or other people calling bugs bugs because they think only true bugs should be called bugs. And true bugs are a certain type of insect which has that long beak and hardened forewings. So those are specific true bugs.
Yeah,
so
I
whether
think it
back
needs
and
its own you always have to describe what you call a bug, always. Because
that's right.
Say snails a bug. I think I even heard some people say snakes are bugs.
No, I mean, basically for me, I would classify, like I introduced, I think arthropods to me are bugs. So, I mean, I even include crabs and lobsters because they're arthropods as well. They're bugs of the sea. So for me, a bug has two definitions. You have the true bug, which is the scientific definition, and then you have the common usage, the layman's usage of bug, which really translate as creepy crawly. So some people may say insect, but then that doesn't cover spiders. So it gets all very, very confusing. And the more you go down these rabbit holes of taxonomy, the more complicated it becomes. But yeah, that's something maybe you want to confirm and deal with, because there's lots of people who like to argue online about what is a bug and what is not a bug.
Hey, Robert, maybe we don't need to share screen at the moment, so we can see.
Okay.
Yeah. Great. I saw Andrick has a question. Andrick,
Is the spiders the same family as the lobsters and crabs and similar animals?
Yeah, you have to be, I mean, that's a great question, because taxonomy has these rules. And so actually, technically speaking, in scientific terms, it's not the same family, it's the same phylum. So actually, I'll just sort of show you oops, that doesn't work at all. Anyway, I'm not sure how it focuses on here. It focuses on my face. There we go. In the book, there's sort of a classification, and it is quite complicated. But yes, I would say that under that grouping of bug, yes, a crab, a lobster, a spider, an insect, and a centipede are all the same kind of thing. They are bugs. So, I mean, you know, you're quite young, you can call them family. I'm not going to argue with that. But if you said that to a scientist, he would say, no, you're wrong. It's a phylum, not a family. So you're right between you and me, but don't say that to a scientist because you'll get annoyed.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
thank you, Andrick. We have Advait. Is that how I pronounce your name? Sorry if I mispronounce it.
Yes, it's correct.
Great. What question do you have?
So I posted something on iNat and it's unknown. And I can't find it anywhere. Is it like
Ooh. Was it wearing sunglasses?
meme?
So iNaturalist has some really good things about it. And I know a lot of people who think it's got a lot of
It's wearing Minecraft glasses.
not so good things about it. So actually, if it's unknown, what you can try and do is classify it as an animal or a plant or an insect, try and classify it, and then maybe an expert will come along later and then reclassify it and try and find out what it is. That's what I do. If I find something that's unknown, I will try and can you narrow it down? Is it an animal or a plant? If it's an animal, is it an insect or a spider or a butterfly? Or can you try and guess a little bit more? And then someone may be able to come along and identify it. Okay. Maybe you've discovered an entirely new species, in which case you have to name it after me.
Thanks so much, Efe. So I saw that Ocean also have a question.
Is the six-eyed spider in how they comes, night they comes, or more they comes?
Oh, I think you mean, yeah, did they come out at night or during the day?
Yes.
I think that's the question, right? So actually, some spiders hunt during the day and some spiders hunt during the night. So if I go out at night, the big orb web spiders will make their web at 8 o'clock at night. It almost on my watch, I can go out and they begin to spin their webs. And a great way of finding spiders at night is to shine your torch and you can see their eyes. And you're right.
Okay. I think I said the most, a lot of fur, that one.
A lot of fur. You may mean the jumping spider, because they're quite, oh, I know what you mean, the wolf spider, the pan-tropical huntsman spider,
yes.
That big hairy one, right?
Yes.
So that's really strange because I have seen them hunt during the day, really big ones like the size of my hand, and I also find them a lot at night. So I don't know why that is, but those spiders hunt during the day and at night. That's when I find them.
Okay.
Good question, though.
Thank you, Ocean. I believe Jaden also have a question. Hi, Jaden.
Hi.
What's your question for Robert?
So Hong Kong's weather is the bugs love. Is it the bugs love it? The weather, the wet weather, Hong Kong's wet weather.
So it's Hong Kong, yeah, it's best to look at, I mean, I don't know if you remember, but when we had the dry period, there weren't many bugs that came out, or animals really. So a lot of animals like the wet weather. So what animals like is when it rains and then it stops raining and then it's hot and sunny. That's when you'll find the most animals. It's when I go out hunting the most, is after the rain, then it's a good time. Because during the rain, a lot of animals will hide away or dig down and they don't want to come out. But after the rain, that's when all the animals come out because they like the rain, and then the bugs will come out, and then the predators will come out, and then the snakes will come out, and then the civet cats will come out, and everything comes out. It's fantastic. So yes, they like the wet.
Hope that answers your question, Jaden. And we have another question from Henry.
I was wondering if there's any insects that we do not know. We do not know. Do you think that there's any insects not known to humankind? For example, like in space or?
No, that's a great question. Actually, there are probably, I mean, we have described 1 million insects today. The scientists estimate we will probably discover maybe another few 100,000. So there's a lot of bugs that we have not found. Now, some of them are very, 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 very small. But I think there's two answers to your very good question. The first one is in Hong Kong, there may be bugs which have been discovered in other areas, but have not been found in Hong Kong before. And if you ever want to have a really cool career, it's to study these insects, because this very famous guy I call Ant-Man came over and is now a tenured professor in Hong Kong U. And he's discovered a couple of 100 new types of ants in Hong Kong. So how cool is that? Going out and discovering. Now, these are not new to science because they exist elsewhere, but they're absolutely new to Hong Kong. What a fantastic job to go and find, not just one, not two, a couple of 100, you know. So if you studied true bugs, they're very understudied, or mosquitoes, there's so many more things to discover. But actually new to science, maybe there's some in Hong Kong. I would say probably most of them are in the jungles and the places where man hasn't been so much, the small variations. To give you an idea, if you were to line up all the different animal species in the world, tiger, elephant, whatever, 1 in 4 would actually be a type of beetle. There's that many beetles in the world, right? So, so there are so many beetles in the world. There are 94,000 different types of weevil beetle in the world. There's so many, and then you get into the scientists. They love to split them by their tiny little differences. I prefer to just keep them all together. Some people like to split them. So yeah, there are hundreds of thousands more insects to find in the world. Off you go to the Amazon. Good luck.
Didn't they say there was 300,000 beetle species?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that question.
Aren't there 350,000 beetle species?
Well, if 1 in 4, I'm trying to think back. I think it's more like 500,000 now. It's hard to keep count because they're just adding more and more and more and more. If we have a million, we have about 1 million insect species, and most of those, a lot of those are beetles. So I think it's more like 500,000 beetles. Maybe if there's a beetle person on this, they can put it in the chat room. A real scientist. Remember, I'm a photographer. I am not a scientist. I'm not a biologist. I'm not an entomologist. Hand up, I'm a photographer. So someone may have better information than me. But I think it's about 500,000 beetle species in the world. In Hong Kong, we have 6,000 beetle species, roughly.
Jasmine?
I want to ask, what's the rarest bug in the world?
Ooh.
Ooh.
The one they haven't found yet. I don't know. I actually don't know. I don't know what the rarest bug is. I don't even know what the rarest bug in Hong Kong is. I think some of the amazing butterflies, because they may have been hunted and pins stuck into them. I know that each country has a butterfly species which is significantly under threat or going extinct. So I would say there's probably about worldwide, maybe 200 or 300 species of butterfly, which are probably going extinct this year. So it's a bit sad. So there's lots of endangered bugs. But to answer your question, the rarest one, I don't know. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Maybe you can help us to find out the question, Jasmine.
I better get onto Google over here. What is
Okay.
Thank you, Jasmine. And if you want to share what you find with us, you can go to our website or Instagram or Facebook and let us know. Thank you for your question. And we have Trisha.
Hi.
I just wanted to ask, you know those bugs that have like the long snout and their eyes are like really big? What is it called again? Are they like Longan bugs? I just wanted to
That's
like
right.
ask, like, where do you find, like, where did you like take a picture of it? Because me and my mom really wanted to know where to find it. Because we're always hiking, so we just wanted to know where to find it.
But that's a great question. It's called the lanternfly or the lantern bug, or can be called the Longan lantern bug. And the best place to find them, interestingly, they always go back to the same tree. So many generations will come back to the same tree. So once you've found a tree, yeah, pretty much guaranteed to see them come back again. So
Okay.
how do you find a tree? Oh, there you go. That's the one. So how do you find them? Well, there's maybe two ways. One is you have to go out and look very carefully on the Longan or the Lychee or on tree trunks, maybe near where you live or in country parks. Do you live on the island or do you live in the New Territories? Where do you live?
We live in the New Territories in a suburb. We live in Huntsman. It's like very far from everyone else.
Okay.
It's quite deserted.
You got to go out a little bit into the country. Maybe you can go out to Shingmun or Taipo Cow or some of the country parks. But these can also be found in quite an urban environment. Now, when I talked about iNaturalist, the app on your phone, you can also do a search for where you can find the different bugs. So if you download the app iNaturalist and look for the lantern bug and then look on a map, you may find a tree near you which has had someone said, oh, I found the lantern bug there. And then you can go to the same place, the same tree, because they normally live on the same tree. So I would use iNaturalist to try and find them. But the other way is you have to go out into the jungles, into the forests, and walking along the path, look on the trunks of the trees very carefully.
I think I know exactly where to find them like now because I have a park nearby my house. It's called Park 7. It basically has a secret little in the corners there are like some really big forests.
Oh,
they're not
good.
really big, but secret forests, and they have a lot of trees. So I think I can just look there.
Go and have a look there. And yeah, if you get to take a picture, then maybe you can enter it into the competition. Good luck.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Trisha. And I believe we have also a question from our founder, Dr. Ying Liu.
Oh.
Yeah, actually, I have several questions for you. But first of all, I just shared a shot of the lantern bug from my roof garden tree in the chat box now, which is pretty amazing. I found it, I was watering and then it just came out like that. My question is this, Robert, with the global bugs, insects population really, really down, as I read somewhere, we have actually the reduction is around 40% or more globally, insects population. My question for you is, why should we protect bugs and insects of the world? Why is it important, insects and bugs in biodiversity, in maintaining biodiversity? Hence the, why we actually made this year's theme as the small and beautiful animals.
Well, I mean, I think there's this quote which is attributed to Albert Einstein that said, if the bees die out, then mankind probably had somewhere a few decades to live. And after that, we're in serious trouble because the bees and a lot of these animals, they play a very, very important part in our lives? Now, for me, that question divides into two, which is about how we are all connected really with the world. So the first one is, when we think about bugs, we always think, are they pests or are they beneficial? Which is kind of viewing them as separate from us. Do they decompose? Do they eat the other bugs? Or can they pollinate? Can they do something good? Or are they vectors for disease? Are they going to eat plants? And we're always thinking of ways of dealing with them in that way. So there's this scientific thing that says, if we don't have bugs, then there could be catastrophic problems for our natural world. I'll give you this amazing fact that one aphid, and an aphid is not even the size of the end of my fingernail. If that aphid just was left alone, and they produce about 600 million aphids a month from that little one. In a year, the world will be covered to about 5 kilometers of aphids. So if we don't have other predators and stuff, we could be in serious trouble. Imagine how much spraying and everything. So there's all these knock-on effects. By eradicating these bugs, we don't know what's going to happen next, but we're already seeing bird populations in decline. So there's the scientific thing that says, if we do not protect our bugs, there will be catastrophic consequences. And we don't really know what they are. A lot of people are saying this may happen, that may happen, but it's going to be bad.
Yeah.
Then the other thing that I look at is saying, okay, they have a value, but what's the value of a butterfly that doesn't really pollinate any useful plant, like a daisy? What's the value of a butterfly? Who cares? Do we need it? I can have a painting, I can have a drawing, I can have a mechanical butterfly. So then you begin a whole other really philosophical discussion and pricing the planet discussion about the value of our natural world, because it is of huge value to humanity. Now, I would argue that a property developer in Hong Kong would have a different view to me about the value of a wetland or the value of a bird flyby or a butterfly. So the whole time, I think there's this pull between being able to say there's this scientific reason, but in my heart, then there's this other emotional attachment to the beauty of our natural world. It's a bit of a long answer, but that's a very difficult question. You put me on the spot there.
No, that's exactly what I want to hear from someone like you, who has been, intimately experiencing the natural world of the biodiversity, and you obviously spent, years looking at bugs, looking at insects, and there's an emotional connection, but there's also a scientific mind. We understand 1/3 of all of our food and fruits are coming from pollinators, and many of them are these bugs and insects and birds and other animals, and they're cleaners. They provide all of these services from our point of view. However, like what you said, what is the true value from a humanity point of view, that we live in a world with all these earthly creatures? And so that's exactly what I was hoping to hear, Robert. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Xingying. And I believe we still have a few more questions. Is that all right? Okay. Hi, James. Do you have any questions for Robert?
How we can know the bug size?
The bug size. So
well, we have very small bugs and we have very big bugs. The biggest bug in Hong Kong, I suppose that may be the rhinoceros beetle or one of those centipedes. They can get really big. But It depends, I suppose, on the type of bug, because you've got spiders and centipedes and lobsters and crabs can be quite big. And other beetles are so small that you really need a big magnifying glass or sometimes even a microscope to tell what they are, like an ant. Very difficult. And the funny thing is, Ant-Man, who has to study these tiny little insects on the floor, is 6'4" tall. He's very, very tall. So he has to get all the way down onto the ground to look at these tiny little bugs. I think it would suit maybe the career of Ant-Man would be better off being 4 foot tall. And kids have a definite advantage of looking down at things.
Thank you so much, James. Do we have any more questions that you want to ask Robert?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jaden. Jaden.
I want to ask one more question. Do bugs hibernate?
Ooh, that's a good question. Not really. They hibernate is something actually that only mammals do. No other animal in the world, actually, because they fall asleep for a long time. So again, it's using a different term, and that's called diapause. So what happens is it's kind of the same thing. So you're right, bugs hibernate. You can tell me that, but if you told a scientist that, he would also say, no, 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 bugs don't hibernate. They do something called diapause. And the difference is, if you think about a bear, when he goes to hibernate, he has a lot of food and he goes off and sits in his hole and falls asleep while it's very, very cold. But a bug, what happens is, if it's an egg or a nymph or an adult, depending on the type of bug, when it gets cold, it stops. So it doesn't develop anymore. So that's different to hibernation, because it's actually stopping their growth. So if it's maybe a nymph under the ground, maybe it's a cicada larvae under the ground and it's cold, it gets really cold, so it just stops moving, doesn't eat anymore, doesn't do anything. Or maybe a praying mantis will lay its egg at the end of the year in October, and then November, December, January, February, March. I was out today and I found these tiny, tiny, tiny little mantises just hatching out. So it's been not really asleep, but it has been paused since it's been in its egg, which was laid at the end of last year. So yes, they hibernate, but if you're a scientist, it's a different word. It's called diapause. Great question.
Thank you so much, Jaden. And we have Henry.
Thank you.
Thank you for the sorry. I'm sorry for another question, but it's going to be a link-on question to Ying Ying Louis' question. But if I think she asked if we are doing. I think she asked if
Sorry,
we should
Henry.
say,
Sorry, for other people, do you mind to mute your microphone so we can hear Henry better? Thank you.
I think her question was if why we need to protect bugs, but my question is, are we doing anything bad to insects? Like in the book Silent Spring, it depicts the central idea of the use of DDT, but I'm wondering if we are doing the similar thing.
Yes. I mean, to answer your question in particular, I can point out many things that this government and the AFCD are doing which are bad for bugs. I was talking to my friend this morning and she was out in a country park and there's this beautiful big field of daisies. And the guy comes along and strims them all down. Now there's no purpose for taking away those food plants for so many different bugs. So to come back, actually, the country parks have no management plan. So this is at a governmental, serious level. It was promised in the biodiversity strategy and action plan that there would be a management plan for country parks, which would then address these issues of strimming and biodiversity and what's good for insects. But it hasn't been done. So what we find is we have all of that spraying against mosquitoes. That's terrible. It's bad. Well, obviously it's bad for mosquitoes. We can live with that, but it's bad for every other single bug. It then gets into the food chain. And what you find is they're spraying it around schools and kindergartens, and there's wet leaves with insecticides that have been banned in other countries since the early 2000s. What are we doing? And it's very difficult to engage the AFCD or the government on this. But yes, I feel very, very strongly that this government is not only not doing enough, but it is specifically doing things which hurt insects, bugs, and biodiversity.
What a great question. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Running. You have a question for Robert?
Thank
For
you.
the rest of the people, can you please mute your microphone, please?
I just want to ask, how do bees hatch eggs in the other house of bees?
Okay. So if you imagine, it's a good question. If you imagine that a solitary bee, not a beehive, but a solitary bee will maybe find a hole in a bamboo or in a wall or in a piece of wood, and it will go inside, and let me see if I can do this, and it will lay its egg there like this, and then it will put food next to it. So it will go out and collect either a spider, or it will collect nectar or plant matter, and then lay its egg, and then go away, knowing that when its egg hatches, it will eat the food that it's left it. But what happens is then this naughty bee comes along and it lays its egg in the same place. And because it's a naughty bee, its egg hatches first, and then it goes and eats all the food. And then the other one wakes up and goes, I have no food, and it dies. So it's like a cuckoo, which will lay its egg in another bird's nest. And then when it hatches, it'll hatch first and kick the other eggs out. So that's what it does. It comes along and eats the other bee's food, but only the solitary bees. It normally doesn't happen in the big hive, because then they would be able to defend against it.
Thank you so much. Thanks for all of your questions. Does anyone have any last minute question that you want to ask Robert? Your last chance. All right. Well, if we don't have any questions for now.
Question, which you probably won't be able to answer because you're not a scientist. What's the definition of phylum?
Ooh, well, I'm looking at my book for that, I suppose. But phylum is the classification of certain animals with shared characteristics. So a phylum is, for example, arthropods. Another phylum would be invertebrates.
Okay,
So
but don't they like
part of the
share characteristics though? Like kind of.
Well, if we look at arthropods, we can see that the shared characteristics are 4 different things, if you remember from the 3rd slide, I think it was. So those shared characteristics, in the same way under the phylum of invertebrates, you'd then have the class of, for example, birds and what the birds have in common. So then those are divided that way. So it's all part of the taxonomy under the, in this case, animal kingdom, but you've also got the plant kingdom.
Yeah, but like, don't like all of them have something in common though?
Well, they're all animals. That's why they're under the animal kingdom.
Yeah,
That's
but
what
like,
makes taxonomy so difficult.
yeah, like for example,
Do you have questions? Sorry, I think you're muted, Jinling.
okay, because you muted me, then you asked me to unmute, and I was a bit confused.
Oh, sorry, that was the wrong click. Yeah, and you have question?
But like for example, like the coral group and like the sponge group and like maybe a few others, like all of them, like they don't really move and they just stay there. Or like bugs and vertebrates, like all of them have like I don't know, blood.
Yeah, that's right. That's why sponges and corals are not part of the animal kingdom.
Well, they are. They're animals.
And the marine organisms, but anyway, okay. We're getting a little bit deep into classifications here. Not sure what the question is.
Maybe you can email us and tell us more, Jinling, after this workshop. I'm sending our email in the chat box, and you can just send us with any more questions that you have.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. So I believe we have our very, very last questions from Ying Ying.
Yeah, I do. Robert, you know that thank you for kicking off this very first workshop this year. And my question for you is really on behalf of everybody here, is that if there's 1 or 2 things that you think each of us can do to really help to protect the bugs of the world, what would that be, other than, you know, drawing, taking a photo, try to get everybody to understand how beautiful they are, how amazing they are, how fascinating they are? Is there anything, 1 or 2 things, small things that we each of us can do to protect bugs, other than not killing them?
I think maybe you always ask the difficult questions. Okay, so I have 2 answers. The first one is, and this was a path that I found myself on, which is look, find, discover, learn, love, protect. The more you go out, the more you can take your aunties, uncles, mum, dad, grandparents, whoever it is, the more you can go out into our natural world, the more you will learn, the more you will love it, the more you will appreciate it. And the more you can do that with people who maybe know a little bit about it and can help point out certain things like guides or whatever, then I think that's very important. And one of the tragedies, I think, of Hong Kong is that not many people are lucky enough to have a garden here. We have, on the other side, we have amazing access to jungles and things right on our doorstep. But a lot of people don't have that immediate bug and butterfly and bird element in their lives. So I would encourage people to get out as much as possible with as many people as possible, and encourage the schools to do things. The other thing I would say is join an organization that you feel you can learn from, and find other people. So whether that, I mean, I particularly like the Hong Kong Bird Watching Society. I know that's not bugs, but Greenpeace, Worldwide Fund for Nature, OWL Hong Kong is one of the great local educators. Obviously what you're doing as well. Really join as many organizations and take part in as many of their activities, because 2 things then happen. First of all, you're engaged, you learn more, but by supporting these organizations, we, the people who care about the natural world, then have a voice. You know, Greenpeace, Friends of the Earth, WWF, they're up there fighting developers, fighting people trying to take away our country parks, fighting this spraying, and they're doing some really good work on our behalf. So I would say, yeah, it's a challenge for a young child, but actually Jane Goodall runs another, I've forgotten what it's called now, but she runs this whole educational program for children. Roots and Shoots, yeah, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And so there are quite a few different ways, I think, for kids to be encouraged to join these organizations, because then they can learn from other people. You know, when I go out with kids, they're always so, oh, what's this, what's that? And afterwards, they're so enamored of what they've found. You know, these once scary things that are suddenly interesting, and that makes a big difference.
First, join the Lumi Voce Voices for the Planet, the competition. Go take a photograph, draw a picture, write about it, sing about it, okay? I mean, that is the very first thing you can do. So we look forward to actually see all of you in the next workshop. Also, we have Robert as well. And he's gonna tell us a little bit more about how we are actually going to be able to take a better photo of these bugs. There's various tricks he was trying to show me the other day. We didn't have enough time. So I'm personally looking forward to hear more about how to take a better photo of these wonderful bugs. So back to you, Chloe.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And thank you so much, Robert, especially for the workshop and sharing your knowledge and experience with us. We will update this recorded section on our website. Everything will be up there, including our upcoming workshops, our upcoming competition. So please go to our website, subscribe, so you can receive updates from us. And lastly, Robert will be having another workshop for us next week on April 13th, same time, same Zoom link. So before we go, can I ask everyone if we can take a screenshot so we can save this as a memory? If you can turn on your camera quickly, we'll take a very quick screenshot of everyone's, and we'll also share on our social media. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and of course our website. So if you're ready, I'm gonna take a screenshot very soon. Ready? Okay, 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna take a few more so we can pick a more pretty one. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Robert, you're gonna have to look prettier.
Oh my God! Well, I like the Usain Bolt there. The guy doing this.
Great. Thank you so much, and we'll see you very soon.
Good stuff.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
I want to watch TV.